So I was in between jobs and I got reached out to by this company that was doing like some sponsored content about internet security, which is sort of, a wheelhouse, which I'm very familiar with. And I was like, that sounds great. I am not working right now, so I would love to have a decent amount of money for this job. And so I looked up comps and I gave them an offer. And not only were they like, that's way too much, they basically just were like, we changed our mind. We don't want to work with you.
Wow. That's always the fear, is that you're going to price yourself out of whatever opportunity it is.
I'm wondering if subconsciously I did it because I was just like, I'm going to ask for as much as possible because this isn't something I particularly want to do. Right. And if I get priced out, then that is a sign that I should not be doing it.
I got ghosted once for that kind of thing too. A university approached me about doing something to promote one of their banned book programs, and it actually sounded great. And then I looked at comps and I gave them a number, and they were like, "We'll get back to you." And guess what?
They never. Luckily, you didn't hold your breath. That's the part we're fortunate about.
Yeah. So Mike, do you have a story to share with like corporate world reaching out to you?
Yeah, and it's like it went so well that it confused me kind of story. I was asked to make a couple original songs for a television show. And the amount of money that they offered me to do this made the rest of my life not make sense. Like suddenly I didn't know what to charge anyone for anything because they were giving me too much money to only make 2 songs. It just didn't make any sense to me. And so I don't know. I think about that a lot because I'm like, how do I get there again?
It's like a golden fleece. What is my metaphor? Unicorn?
Unicorn.
It's a unicorn. All right, Alex, we're going to start the show now.
Sounds good.
You're a podcaster. You come from one of the most successful podcasts of all time, Reply All. Now you're doing something different. You're doing Hyperfixed. But we want to start the conversation where we usually start conversations. It's an awkward place for some people.
It can be.
Mike, are we flipping coins, or you've taken on this job? So yeah. I'm happy. I'm so proud of you.
I'm a little baby bird, and I can fly now. I can fly. Okay. You've shown me the way. We do start off every conversation with a question. It can be quite intense, but it opens us up to the conversations we're trying to have, which is, when's the last time you were worried about covering your monthly finances or expenses? Expenses is the better word.
Last month.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Last month I put $5,000 of my own money into the company in order to make payroll.
Okay. And how long into the company is this now where you found yourself in that position?
Let's see. So I incorporated in June of 2024.
Okay.
So about 2 years. I mean, we only started making shows like weekly episodes in November of 2024. So a year and a half, maybe.
Okay.
And how have you been able to make it work? Like what you went from, again, Reply All, a radio show that I think one of those that people can say to their parents and be like, "Hey, I heard something on Reply All," and it went outside like the heavy podcast listener stream, right? And you've gone to something completely independent. So what did it take for you to make that leap?
What it took was the entire podcast industry collapsing in on itself.
Okay, yeah.
All right.
I mean, I think what happened is I worked for a company called Gimlet, which was started by Alex Bloomberg, who is a 20-odd year veteran of This American Life, wanted to make documentary style reporting stuff, and was really dedicated to it and really believed in it. And then we were bought by Spotify in 2019 or something. And it might shock you to find out that Spotify didn't necessarily believe in in journalistic reporting. In fact, they really didn't like us very much.
When you say us, you mean everyone under the Gimlet umbrella, or your show specifically?
I mean, our show specifically, because we were sort of the biggest people. We were the biggest show, and I feel like made the most requests in terms of sort of getting what we wanted. But also, I think in general, they just had like a real. I mean, you guys know the tech industry. They do not like journalists. So and buying a company full of journalists is a very uneasy marriage.
And I didn't mention what Reply All was even about, but it was sort of internet culture in a lot of ways, and a lot of tech journalism, and told with a narrative, in a narrative manner, like they were stories, and reported. It wasn't just a couple guys yakking, right? Though there was good yakking too. But do you think that you were particularly threatening to them? Because Spotify's the kind of company you would cover.
Well, I mean, we did cover them a couple times during their ownership of us. And in that time, they never once granted us an interview.
Wow.
They refused every time that we were covering Spotify to give us an interview. That's one of the reasons I think they thought we were kind of a nuisance. Because, we would be like, hey, how many of the things that are on your website are made with AI? How much of this is legit or not? Are the rumors that you guys are actually creating your own music in order to sort of put that music on a playlist and generate revenue for yourselves true? Because that was a persistent rumor at the time. And they were just very annoyed that they had to answer this question at all. So they chose not to.
You were covering the demise of the journalism industry and the rapacious nature of modern technology companies in real time. Yeah.
And I don't even think that I was aware. Like, I even think that I was a little Pollyanna-ish about how bad things were going to get. Like, I didn't quite understand how much they hated us and how much they did not care about the existence of journalism at all.
When it came time for the show to end, and this is just as much as you'd want to get into it. Is there an ownership situation where you couldn't just take the show somewhere else? Or were you just completely over the weight of having had that show for that long?
I mean, I think part of it was, my co-host resigned from the show after some people in on our staff complained about mistreatment, bullying behavior. And so I didn't particularly want to be yoked with that. But independent of that, when Spotify was purchased, my co-host and I had 25% ownership stakes in Reply All, and the other 50% was owned by Gimlet, and which was a sweetheart deal that we got because we were the first show, and like the whole model was unproven, and no one had any idea whether it was going to work or not. So when Spotify came along, they were like, "No, you cannot own this anymore. In order for the sale to go through, you need to own 100% of the show." So they owned 100% of it. We did not get any of it.
And what did you do when it all got shut down?
What did I do when it all got shut down? That is a very good question. I spent a couple years kind of floundering, trying to figure out what to do with my life. And I have to be honest, am I allowed to swear on here?
Oh gosh, please do.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well,
yeah.
So
Podcaster,
when we quit, I was like, well, I'm coming off a massive success. How hard could it be? Like, I'm king shit a fuck mountain. How hard could it be for me to go find another show, to go find someone who's willing to fund another show? But every time I reached out to someone and I was like, hey, here's my crazy idea. Give me, $500,000 to try and make this thing, and I'll make something really impressive because I have this pedigree behind me that you should believe in. they'd be like, we could do that. Or, what if you did a chat show instead that came out several times a week? And I was like, I don't really know how to do that. And that's not what my audience is looking for. Like, people who liked Reply All are not going to listen to the show that you're describing. But that sort of was every conversation I had. And I was just kind of obstinate for a while. Like, Reply All ended in 2022. And I would say for 18 months, I was just like, well, I just need to find the right partner. And I think the thing that was the starkest was I got approached by a production company who was like, hey, we'd be interested in doing a show on fandom and fandom culture and interview people for that and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, that sounds right up my alley. I would love to do that. So we piloted, I think, 2 episodes, and they were looking for a partner to produce it. And they spent 6 months or so telling us, we've got some leads, we'll get back to you. And then finally, when they did get back to us, essentially said, we couldn't find anybody who is interested. Here's our idea. You make a first season of 18 episodes and we'll pay you $500 per episode. And I was like, guys, I wrote back and was like, I don't know how else to say this, but that's pretty insulting. I'm sorry, I'm not going to be doing that. And I was like, I can't do it for less than like $1,500 an episode. And they said, we'll get back to you. And I never heard from them again.
I kind of want to talk about the podcast implosion, because that's something that I also got exploded in. I got hit by shrapnel. I'm
sorry to hear that.
I still kind of lick in my wounds about it, honestly. How would you describe it? Because I have a story in my head about what happened, but I'm curious what your in the middle of it all version of it is.
I think there were a bunch of contributing factors. It's really hard to pinpoint it to one thing. I think if I were to narrow it down to a few, the belief was that you could take a podcast like Reply All, which was narrative and sort of heavily focused on narrative, and it could be great fodder for film and television options. So like, I do think that there was a belief that you could take a show like ours and then, option 5 or 6 movies from it. And, we did get a couple options. Nothing ever got made. And there are a variety of reasons for that happening. I think that that's probably one of the things, was that there was this idea that it would become this crazy growth industry and you could make 1 million serial style movies. And there were a couple, like, Homecoming, which was made by Gimlet, which was a fiction show, got adapted into a television show with Julia Roberts and Bobby Cannavale, or maybe Jason Schwimmer. Maybe Bobby Cannavale was in the podcast. But like, nothing ever materialized. But the other thing that I think is much more important is that companies realize that, like, you don't need to pay for all these journalists and 6 months of research for an episode when you can get Jason Bateman and Will Arnett to come on and just chit chat for a while, and they bring in thousands of people, millions of people on name alone.
So from what I saw, I do blame the pandemic, basically.
I mean, that's certainly another part of it, right? No one was commuting anymore.
It's because all these celebrities stuck at home. Someone's like, hey, why don't you do a podcast?
Right.
And then these celebrities found that they could easily parlay just name recognition and yap. And just yapping became a thing you could do. And as a person who did interview shows, I would say that's also a skill that journalists have. And it's not just yapping all the time. There's yapping.
Right.
But it isn't the kind of, I mean, you do interviews, this. Right. It's a skill, and you don't get that skill just from being very funny, right? And or being famous.
I do agree. I actually listened to Smartlist for the first time the other day, because I was like, what is the deal? What is the big deal with this show? Why do people like it? And I mean, I do understand that so much of the appeal of podcasts is that it's like you're hanging out with your buds, you're hanging out with these people who you develop a relationship with. But since I did not have that relationship, I do not have that relationship with these guys. I did not get it at all. I just don't understand it. It's not for me. And I'm sure they're all very nice. Well, I don't know. They could be terrible, but I assume they're all nice. I have nothing against them. It's just I don't understand the appeal.
So you had 18 months of flailing.
Well, can I jump in for just 1 sec? Because I did have another question about the implosion before we moved on from that. And
sure,
I don't know if we've touched on it in this conversation as much as it feels like it was a central factor to me, or maybe I'm just confused about how its importance. But to me, it seems like the value of the advertising or the amount that companies were spending on podcasts also crashed. Is that true? It feels true to me.
I can't speak for companies outside of Gimlet, but one thing I can tell you is that the way they positioned themselves in the market early on was like, oh, we're going to be the HBO of podcasts. Like we're going to do like prestige audio drama and audio stories. And part of that was them saying like, because we are the HBO of podcasts, we're going to charge crazy advertising prices. And it was early enough in that period of time where they could. And I remember when we first started, the CPMs on our show, and if anybody is listening doesn't know what a CPM is, it's cost per 1,000 listeners. So every 1,000 people who download the episode and listen to the ad, you get a certain dollar amount. Right now for me, my CPMs are like $25. So every 1,000 people who download the show, I get $25. Well, I get 70% of $25 and 30% goes to the people who sell my ads.
Sure.
But when we were at Gimlet, we were charging, I think, between 65 and 75.
Wow.
So about 3 times as much. And I think, yes, there was a deep depression in online advertising. And I am not smart enough in, economics to understand what changed exactly. I don't know if it's just that the market became so full of competitors that they were able to charge lower prices. But it is distinctly different than, say, 2017 when we were sort of at our peak at Reply All.
Do you think that any of this at all has to do with de-skilling what it takes to be a podcaster and maybe even AI?
Less to do with AI, but certainly more to do with what it takes to be a podcaster. I mean, when we started, we were all, refugees from NPR, and like we'd all gone to journalism school. And I think once people got a hold of microphones and were able to make stuff, they were suddenly making it for almost nothing in their basements. And that is not in any way to denigrate the skill of some of those podcasters. I think that's that democratization is really good. I don't think that's bad. I don't think that competition is bad, but it is just the nature of this industry that it did make it harder to justify charging those kinds of prices.
And yet here you are, still a podcaster.
I know, against my better judgment.
So let's get beyond the initial implosion then.
Mm-hmm.
You spend 18 months trying to sell or trying to, find a partner for your good ideas. And then what?
I kind of was just like, I don't know what to do here. How do I make something without someone funding it? So the first thing I did was I talked to Radiotopia, which is a company that distributes podcasts and sells ads for them, and said, hey, are you interested in making something with me? And they were like, yeah, sure, but we're not going to be able to offer you like any startup capital or anything. And so I realized that what I was going to need to do was sort of Patreon style model, which is something that I had never done before and was honestly really uncomfortable with. The idea, I just was like, I don't like the idea of charging people to listen to certain episodes of the show. I want it all to be free and all to be paid for by advertising. And then realized very quickly, well, it's great that you want that, but that's not the way things work anymore.
Not to interrupt, but I'm curious about that particular point. Since you had the history of, doing podcasts where you had the institutional support, and you weren't leaning on listeners, did you feel like you had a relationship with the listeners of Reply All, or how was that relationship fostered if you weren't having to communicate with them and solicit any support directly?
I do think that we had a relationship with listeners, and I think part of the relationship was that a lot of times we were we would do segments we called super tech support, where listeners would write in and say, "Hey, I've had this problem. I can't resolve it. I have no idea what to do with this. Could you look into it?" And like part of that was like fostering this connection with our audience. And independent of that, I just think that like the relationship that one has with people that they're listening to is really contingent on sort of getting to know the personalities of those people. And I think that we put a lot of our personalities into the show. Mm-hmm. So even if I wasn't like directly communicating with them, they were still, on the rare occasion, one of the best things about being a podcaster is you never get no one knows who you are. You never get recognized anywhere. But on the rare occasions that happened, people would say like, "Hey, how's your son? How's this thing in your life?" And I was like, "Oh, wow. I really talk about a lot on the show that I did not realize I was talking about." So I do think that like sort of that level of openness did make people feel connected to us, even though we didn't have sort of a direct patronage model.
Okay. So I just, didn't want to interrupt too much. I did want to hear you continue talking about how you landed on your new endeavor.
Oh, yeah. So I spoke to a company called Supporting Cast that essentially does payment processing for people who are doing Patreon patronage style model. And they offered to give me a loan.
Okay.
And it was that loan that made the show possible. Basically, for the first year it was in production, they agreed to a fixed amount of money that they would give me every month, and I would be trying to get my patrons together and get my dollar amounts up. And the way it worked was any patron money that came for the first year went straight to them. And then afterward, if there was any money left over on the loan was for $200,000.
Okay.
And at the end of a year, I think I had about $25,000 left on it. And they are now taking a little, at like 12% or something until I pay it back, which should be by the end of this year.
Wow. That seems impressive to me. That but you needed that to get going, which is a pretty hefty amount. I mean, let's be honest. And you have staff that you're paying with that?
Yeah, I have 2 full-time producers, 1 part-time producer, and then, I'm paying for a million different little things like apps that we use, transcription software, the Riverside, which is what we're recording on right now. And then I pay an engineer to engineer every episode. I pay for some music that I use. It adds up.
So what's your monthly outlay?
Probably about, I would say between 20 and 25,000. That's about right.
And can I just ask, what are you bringing in from patrons?
What I'm bringing in from patrons, that's a great question. Give me a second here.
Because you're patron supported and not ad supported.
Well, we do have ads as well. So
okay.
We've got a combination of the two. According to this right now, my monthly recurring revenue is about 10,000 from patrons. And then it's between It's like usually around 10 to 15,000 on via ads. So my margins are razor thin if I have margins at all, which is why I had to put $5,000 into the company last month.
I was going to say, so are you making money at all, or is that part of what you pay for a month is your salary?
I personally have not taken my salary since September of last year. I'm kind of not making money until such time as, I've paid off this loan. And also the other thing that you have to consider is that money comes in irregularly.
Right.
For example, we got a huge sign up when we announced the show, and a huge sign up when the first episode kicked off. So in September and November, I get a ton more money than I do in the first quarter of any year. And so those are really tight. And then when September and November come around, I will be paying myself back for not paying myself for the past year, basically.
And so the position you found yourself in, where you've had to put in 5,000 of your own money to get the business through, is that because of a particular lull, or I guess, are you able to foresee that? Are you able to foresee the revenue getting to a point where you don't have to do that, or is that something you feel like you're going to have to do from time to time, based on how things are operating now?
My genuine hope is that I don't. Like, I have clear ideas of what I need to get to. It's just been a lot harder than I expected. Initially, when I started the show, I was like, I need 10,000 patrons, 200,000 listeners. And I was like, I can do that in a year. That's 1/5 of the Reply All listenership. That should be no problem.
So you had 1 million listeners.
Yeah, wow, we had 1 million per episode by the end of the show, which was big. Let this be a lesson to you. If you have a successful podcast, don't wait 2 years to start another one. People forget about you. But right now we're at about 100,000 listeners and about 3,500 subscribers. So we've got a ways to go. But I also have a incredible team of people who are working for less than their worth, for 2 reasons, I think. One, they believe in the show in terms of its potential to grow. And the other is that, like, I obviously can't offer them money. We are all getting paid the same amount. I'm not paying myself more than anybody else. We all get the same amount, which is basically like a day rate. My only goal is to give people raises and pay them for their health care right now. That's my number one priority. But the thing, since I can't offer them a huge salary or benefits right now, what I can offer them is like the respect and freedom to make a thing that they're proud of and to give them ownership of the stories that they're making. And, if it were ever the case that a story got optioned from this show, I would be giving 100% of the option money to the people who produced the story. Wow. I would not be keeping it for myself, because kind of the least I can do considering what they're working for at the moment.
I have to think, and I wonder if you agree, that another reason why this is working out in terms of paying them less than their worth is that the job market right now for journalists is pretty miserable. Not that it isn't a wonderful project and people would be proud to be a part of it.
I'm not offended by that at all. That's very true.
But I think I'll just say, present company included, we're all working for less than we're worth right now.
I mean, I think that, it was a very strange thing, because so Gimlet was purchased by Spotify. I decided I didn't want to do Reply All anymore in the spring of 2022. The show ended in the summer of 2022, and then summer of 2023, Spotify shut down Gimlet Studios, fired almost everybody. Wow. And suddenly 100 something of my friends were unemployed. And yeah, everyone's struggling. Everybody's taking jobs piecemeal and getting paid less than their worth. And there's certainly a huge shock to that when you go from working at a massive tech company with seemingly unlimited money to working by yourself and just trying to make ends meet. You know?
Can we talk a little bit more about the creative of your new endeavor? Like, since you just talked about it as, you know, multiple producers making multiple are there different podcasts on the thing that you are developing, or is it all just under the umbrella of the Hyperfixed podcast that you do?
It's all just Hyperfixed. I do have a side project where I'm watching every movie in the Amityville horror franchise, but that has nothing to do with this. That's
I
just
want to
for
talk
fun.
about that after you finish talking about Hyperfixed. I have on my bookshelf right now the Amityville horror book, which I did podcast
yeah. Well, then we should
about.
talk about it. You should come on. You should watch one of the movies with us.
I do. I'm one of the rotating kind of guests for the Losers Club, the Stephen King podcast.
Oh, yes. Then definitely you need to come on.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So I have an
so
interest in horror.
So the way the show works is that listeners write into us. The whole premise of the show is listeners write into us with their problems, and we try and fix them. And their problems can be small stuff. It can be personal stuff. It can be technical stuff, and we will try and fix it. So, if I could give some examples, a listener wrote into us and said, "Hey, you know, we used to go to this neighborhood bakery for decades. I grew up in Brooklyn. I went to this bakery for decades. I loved this cake they made. The bakery shut down with no warning, and no one seems to be able to recreate this cake. What do we do?" So we ended up using their recollections and photographs of it and taking them to, what's her name? Claire Saffitz, the baker who used to work at the New York Times and is now has her own YouTube channel. And she helped us recreate the cake based on their recollections of it and descriptions of it. And it took a ton of work. I had to like drive up to her house, which is upstate, and then drive to the Rockaways and give the family their cake and watch them eat it and cross my fingers and hope that it worked. So that's an example of one. We just got one that we're working on right now, which is a woman who is a retail pharmacist, and that is a very thankless and difficult job. And one of the things that helped her get through it was this guy who made a podcast about retail pharmacy and how thankless and difficult it is, and had people write in, and she was just like, it made me feel less alone. And then that guy one day made a 9-minute podcast episode, which basically said, "I'm going through stuff. I can't make this anymore. I've quit my job. I want you all to keep fighting," and then disappeared.
Wow.
And this was 4 years ago. And she was like, "I need to know if he's okay."
Wow.
So I found him and reached out and connected with him, and then he's doing all right. I don't want to spoil it because that one's not out yet, but that's the kind of stuff we're working on. It can be small, it can be big, it can be emotional, I'm working on a story right now about why a Logitech mouse stopped working. A certain brand stopped working for everyone across the world because of a mistake Logitech made. Because the listener was like, "How can my mouse just stop working because of a mistake someone made at like Logitech headquarters?" Seems like a very poor design. So that's the kind of stuff we work on. So it's all under the Hyperfixed banner, but everybody is kind of working on reporting out each story independently.
I see. You just reminded me of something, because you said retail pharmacy podcast and my brain exploded a little. And then I remembered something. I just put out a song that's called Concrete. And I tend to make these little social media videos of little random stuff to support music. So I was looking up videos of Concrete, and I stumbled upon these guys that do a concrete podcast. They do literally do a podcast about mixing concrete. Now, that's neither here nor there, but I was
crazy
reminded of it.
I mean, there really is one for everyone.
Okay.
Honestly.
Two things. One is one of the accounts I follow on Instagram is this woman who's a subterranean engineer, and she's building a tunnel under her house.
Yeah. I know this lady.
Okay. Yeah. I'm new to this. This is new to me.
She just started digging a tunnel under her house, and she's made it massive. And there was a period of maybe almost a year where she had to stop because the city came in and like were like, you cannot do what you're doing. And then she was like, all right, well, I'll file for the necessary permits and I will go through all of the sort of bureaucracy in order to make this possible. And she got the go ahead, and now she's just digging her tunnel again. Not
and
for any purpose.
It's
just
hugely deep. And also she has all these like problems with it. Like it has, she hits water, so she needs to funnel water out. She discovers that it's more efficient to mix her own concrete. So she has to get the mechanisms for concrete and build this like crazy tube. Have you seen this, Alex? Like she has to build this tube that doesn't bring the concrete down, but brings the sand down so that she can then mix the concrete where it's going to be poured. It's fascinating.
Even just figuring out how to get stuff out of the hole has been.
Yeah, she has to do that too.
It's been really fascinating.
And she has almost these ASMR videos where she just takes these huge chunks of granite and taps at them until they break.
Wow.
Anyway, love her. I do wonder how she makes a living, if she's like an engineer in her spare time, or if somehow this is generating enough income for her. And then the other thing I just wanted to add at the end is that retail pharmacy is actually kind of fascinating in terms of what a shitty job it is, and yet how important it is that this is the new primary interface that people have with the healthcare system.
Wow.
Yeah.
That they see a pharmacist, you see a pharmacist a lot more than you see a doctor, right?
I mean, a lot of the discussion, the woman who got in touch with us was like, I was chronically ill as a teenager. And the reason that I feel like I became a pharmacist was because of the ability to talk to the pharmacist about why they prescribed me these and what they were supposed to be treating.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So,
and they're
definitely
really poorly paid. They're really, they're kind of beat up by the healthcare system as much as anyone. And it is the most, at this point, again, the most important part of the industry for a pharmacist will spend time with you that a doctor can't. So I get why that podcast was so important to this woman. And I'm glad to hear the guy's okay. And it's a good reason to listen to the podcast.
Thank you.
So speaking of, tunnel making videos and stuff like that on Instagram. You said in the past that video and TikTok doesn't really suit Hyperfixed format, but that's where a lot of audience growth happens. So what is the strategy for you all when it comes to audience growth, given that those sort of obvious places don't really work for your format?
The strategy is still to be determined.
Copy that. I have my notepad out, so.
I mean, again, like for the first couple years that I would say for the first year that the show was out, I was operating on the playbook that I used in 2016 when the market and the way people consume media was like totally different. So in 2016, the way we got audience was we would collaborate with another show or have one of our stories appear on another show. We had, I think, 2 stories on This American Life and 1 on Radiolab. And each time we would pull in about 40,000 new listeners, like just a massive amount. So I was like, no problem. I know the guy I know people at 99% Visible. I know people here. I know people there. I'm going to go ahead and do that. And we would do it. And it like wouldn't move the needle at all. Because I think people just have their listening behaviors and it's really hard for them to get out of those. And the other thing I think is that the like video clip economy is no longer about pushing people in the direction of the thing you're making. The clip is the moneymaker.
Right.
The clip is the value prop, right? I mean, we had an Instagram story or Instagram reel go viral where we got like 1 million views or something like that. I think we picked up 100 Instagram followers. Like it's like non-existent. So if I want to make money from those, it would be making enough of them that, that they end up, sort of that we catch virality and people like those specifically. So I still don't really know the answer to this question. We did do a collaboration with Planet Money a couple episodes ago, And I would say that brought in maybe 3,000 to 5,000 new listeners, which is like huge.
Right.
That's great. But it's just such a different environment. And the other thing that I haven't really mentioned that I think is definitely a thing is that I just think that people's attention spans are not the same. The appetite for 30-minute documentary radio stories is not the same as it was 10 years ago. Even for me, like I definitely am a victim of TikTok attention span syndrome where I have less appetite for that kind of stuff. So I don't know. I'm still figuring it out. I hope I get there.
One of the things that would scare me if I had a show called Hyperfixed and encouraged people to send in their problems was that to me that it felt like it would give me a lot of pressure in presenting myself or my organization as somebody who can fix people's problems. How do you all farm your problems that you solve? And then like, have you encountered one yet where just like, this is too much. This is not something that you wanted to, but it's not something you thought you were able to tackle.
Oh yeah. We encounter those all the time. We've hit stories where we will get 3/4 of the way through it and be like, you know what? We can't answer this.
Wow.
And I think that's sorry.
I said, no, I just said,
What'd
wow,
you say?
that you would get that far into
yeah.
it and realize that it's not really something you can tackle.
We just put a story on ice that we were working on for like a year during our last story meeting, which happened right before I got on the call with you guys. And it was agonizing to have to do that. But also, it's so much better than, the sunk cost fallacy of trying to keep going. But I think that the way that we temper people's expectations is that my personality on the show is relatively similar to the one you're experiencing right now, which is a person who's like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just out here. So I think people, the way that every show opens is I say, hi, my name's Alex Goldman. This is Hyperfixed. Each week on our show, people write in with problems and I solve them, or at least I try. And if I don't, I give a good reason why I can't.
I see.
So that is, I built in like, hey, this might not work out for you, but we do our best. And sometimes we actually air the ones where we're like, we didn't figure out this problem, but here is why this problem is persistent.
What are the hardest problems to solve?
The hardest problems to solve are usually the ones that require us to have access to corporations. And it doesn't matter if the corporation is someone like that is really into secrecy, like Palantir or Google or whomever, or if it's like Betty Crocker, who we have had to talk to and was difficult. We actually got Betty Crocker on the phone, but it was very hard to get them. It took months.
Not Ms. Crocker, but someone from the...
Funny you should mention that, because while we were working on the story, one of my producers, Amori Yates, found a nutritionist who helped us with the story, whose name was Betty Crocker. So we got the fake Betty Crocker on the show, and then spoke to the real CEO of Betty Crocker at the end.
If that's already aired, do you mind my asking what was the problem that needed to be solved by Betty Crocker?
It was Betty Crocker icing, and someone picked it up. They were living in Vancouver, and they picked up this Betty Crocker icing, and it had a warning on it which said, "Do not consume." It said only to be consumed with other food. And he was like, "What does that mean? Is this like toxic on its own? What could that possibly mean?" And so we finally got to the head of Betty Crocker, and they were like, "It is very inexact technical writing that someone did, and we are going to change it." So, journalism in action. We figured out what it was meant to say was basically just like, this is not like a substitute for actual food. This is just something that goes on top of a cake.
I've been thinking a lot lately about what my hourly rate is for journalism, because it's something I wish people thought more about. I'm sure the hourly rate for music is also really low. So you're making what you said you made. Your monthly outlay is what 20? Is that it?
About 20, 25.
About how many hours go into each show?
Including all of my colleagues?
Yeah.
Oh, God. An insane amount go into each show. I would say that, our shortest episodes or our easiest episodes, the shortest turnaround on an episode is between like 4 and 6 weeks. We're interviewing several people. And then, we write a script, we edit the script. It's a lot. So 6 weeks of work at 40 hours at least. I don't know how to do math, but that's a lot. All right. 40 times 3 times 6 to 30. What? That can't be right. I don't know how to do math.
Let's see. How long does it take a bunch of journalists to figure out hours per week? So I bet your number was right, actually. You said so.
What I'm getting is 3,600 hours. That can't be right. That's crazy. I don't know how to do math. This is the whole reason I became a journalist, so I didn't have to do math. And I got into podcasting so I don't have to dress up for work.
I think we can just do the round number of six weeks of work for 3 people working full time.
Yes.
Right. And that adds up to not a lot per hour. We can.
No, not very much.
And that's also four episodes a month.
Yeah, we do. I mean, to be fair, we do one main feed episode and then one bonus episode. So we're doing like 2 main feed episodes, which are generally the deeply produced ones. The bonus episodes are either stories that didn't quite pan out the way we hoped or extended interviews. So they generally are a lighter lift.
All right. Yeah, I'm sure that makes a huge difference. Yeah, that's going to bring it up to a living wage for sure. I don't think so. It's like, it's a way it's not fair, right? I do think about that number because I do think people should know that's the amount of work that goes into one of these things. That especially when you have a deeply reported story, what you think of when you think of a journalist job is we are not getting paid very much. Whenever you see a 6-figure salary for a journalist, it's still not very much in terms of how many hours we put in. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, we had a guest on that Colt Cabana. Actually, he said this, Mike, which I'm never going to forget. He said we get paid in time, we get paid in freedom. That it's not just a dollar amount. That we get paid in order to be able to do what we want. Like I recently thought about it because I am in the middle of trying to do something, but yesterday I just couldn't face the world. And I actually spent a lot of time in my pajamas watching YouTube. And I thought to myself, if I was working in any other job, like this ability to kind of like to be able to take a break and do something that's a little bit silly, that is only, and yet at the same time, like that's part of who I am. And I get to absorb this culture and maybe write about it someday. Right. So I'm curious for you, like what's the other way that you get paid?
Oh, I mean, I get to like learn about incredible, amazing stuff all the time. I've become a low-key expert in the field of hedge mazes because I did a story about hedge mazes. I know I got to speak to the world's preeminent hedge maze designer. I mean, who gets to do that? On top of that, like, I also have to say that like I lived through the halcyon days of the podcast boom where I was getting paid pretty well. Probably more than I certainly more than I ever expected to get paid. So money comes and goes. The freedom to work how I want to work and the good fortune I have to work with the Hyperfixed team of Amor Yates, Emma Cortland, Sari Savas-Zukenik, Kat Shuknecht, all these people who've come and gone from the show in the relatively brief time that we've been working on it. Like, I am so lucky, incredibly talented, incredibly kind, incredibly curious people. That's worth not getting paid. I think that's worth deferring my pay for 9 months and then paying myself back in September. Like, I'm very lucky to work with these people. And so, yeah, it's a challenge. I hate being the boss. I hate having to worry about keeping track of receipts and W-9s and invoices. None of that is stuff I was trained to do, and I'm bad at it. I frequently will go on Slack and text and say to my coworkers, just curious, I'm looking at my bank account. I'm just curious, when's the last time you invoiced me? And I want to make sure that I paid you. But I do feel so lucky to be able to do what I do. And so it's really, as much as I'm like, this is a scary thing and I don't know if it's going to work, just having the opportunity is like really incredible.
So the most important part of our podcast, we've covered a little bit because we know what you need. But if someone wants to support you, what are the best ways to do so?
The best way is if they become a member of Hyperfixed. It's hyperfixedpod.com/join. You get bonus episodes and discounts on merchandise, and we're doing a live show in September. You'll get a discount on that as well. If you don't feel like paying for it or can't afford it, which I totally get, the best thing you can do is share it with other people. Because the more listeners we get, the more financially stable we will become. But, just listening at all is supporting us. So I really appreciate anybody who listens, period.
And where will people be able to find the Amityville Horror podcast that I will soon be a guest on?
The podcast is called Amityvilleville. We're currently, I think, on the 16th Amityville movie. There are about 90 of them. I don't know if you knew that it's become a big independent craze
90's a lot.
to make independent Amityville movies. Starting in about 2011, there are like 20 a year. There's an insane amount of them.
And they're like direct to video?
They are direct to streaming. A lot of them are like fully homemade handheld camcorder movies. And some of them are really tough to get through. So, but they get very silly. There's Amityville Karen, Amityville Outhouse, Amityville in Space, Amityville Vibrator is one.
Okay, all right.
Anything can be haunted.
That's true. That's true.
So, I'm sorry, say again?
Anything can be haunted. Any item.
I mean, so later in the series, there was a big emphasis on haunted objects that came from the Amityville house and went somewhere else, so that they didn't need to get that expensive filming location and could just film it anywhere. So there are a ton of there's haunted wind-up monkey, there's haunted mirror, there's haunted lamp. All of these have been the plot line of an Amityville movie. And you can find that it's at Amityvilleville on all social media and on your podcast app.
Well, this conversation has not been haunted at all. This has been very, very nice, very informative. We appreciate your transparency and your willingness to talk about the uncertainty of it all, because that's, something we're unfortunately all dealing with is uncertainty in all of our arenas and institutions.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I really appreciate you guys reaching out. It's been a true pleasure talking to you.